I have to go back and figure out. There we go. I'm good. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Kris Craven graduated with an MS from our department in 1999. And she had a BA earlier from the University of Kansas. Was interested in operational weather forecasting, and ended up working in the National Weather Service in Topeka, Kansas, where she previously was a senior meteorologist and acted as the local fire weather program leader. She's also interested in doing various things to promote women in STEM. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience forecasting and what a forecasting job looks like. So we're looking forward to that very much. So thank you, Kris.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Oh, yeah, I got it, Pete. I saw that you muted me, but then I became unmuted, so we're good.
And I'm going to interrupt really quickly, and sorry to interrupt, but Pete, you told me to remind you to record this so we can put it up on the alumni page.
Oh, that's right.
And let's go ahead and mute everyone and get going.
It's recording. I started just before Larissa did the intro, so thanks, though, Dan.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can make this work from as I haven't tried it with the actual PowerPoint here yet. Let's see if I can make it go. Did I make it go? I did make it go. Okay, so I should be sharing a screen with a slide. Are we good to go there?
It looks good. It looks good here, yeah.
Okay, so I put this together. Like Pete said, I'm a graduate of the department back in 1999. I can't believe it's been that long. It really does not feel like it's been that long. But I thought maybe I'd just sort of put together some really simple slides about how I got where I'm at, because I'm in a place that I didn't know that I would be. And so I feel like, at least in my life, when people share their experiences with me, I'm able to kind of take the pieces that I need and leave the rest. So I thought I would just sort of show you my path, and you can take it for what it's worth and leave the rest. So with some guidance from David Byrne and Talking Heads, we'll just talk about how I got here. I've done a lot of things in the Weather Service, and I'll kind of go through each office that I was at. This is just kind of the big overview. I started out in the Keys. Actually, I started out volunteering in Milwaukee, and then I got a job in the Keys. I came to Topeka after working in Colorado for 4 years, and then I got promoted here in Topeka again. So it all told, I've been in 4 offices if you count my shadow over the course of 20 years. And I'm doing something I didn't think I would ever do. In terms of applications for you guys, as you know, meteorology has a lot. This top screen is taken from a school presentation, so you can I know you realize it has roots in math, physics, and chemistry, but there's several different venues you can take in meteorology, obviously, and so I am of the operational forecasting genre. I always knew I wanted to be a forecaster and be an operational meteorologist. I did some research along the way, and I've done TV, and I've done radio, and I've done teaching, but I always wanted to. So that's where I sort of pointed my head and moved in that direction. And one of the reasons I ended up at the University of Wisconsin is when I was accepted at Florida State, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is the one that really was going to let me pursue that part of what I wanted to do. So they convinced me to come up there, and so there I came. This is my really quick plug for the National Weather Service. Despite there not being a lot of jobs, there's a lot of places where you can work. So there's a lot of opportunity if you look for it, not just in Weather Service offices, but in the national centers and the regional centers and the training center and in aviation weather. So there are lots of different avenues, even just within the Weather Service itself, in terms of looking for things to do that you can work in everything from space weather to aviation to hydrology to you can do modeling, you can do operational forecasting. It's all over the map. So all that is contained in the Weather Service. I like this slide. This was a picture I posted from an event. I took a second and stood in the back of the room and took a quick picture and sent it to a friend, and then I posted it on social media, and it blew up. This is why I do what I do. I like being in this environment. I like our I've always loved radar meteorology. That's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to be an operational forecaster, is I was always watching radar. So during big events, when it's all, we've hit the ground running, this is what we look like, and this is where the metal meets the road. So that's one of the reasons I do what I do. It's been a long path. This is my local Kansas slide. Like, I grew up in Kansas, went to grade school, middle school, and high school here, and I actually got a bachelor's in environmental studies from the University of Kansas. So I always had an interest in natural science. My degree is actually in land use planning and resource management. But I graduated and I realized that I didn't really want to work for the EPA. So my big job after I got out of college was waiting tables. So don't be discouraged if this is part of what you're doing right now, because I did it. I actually was in the restaurant industry off and on for 9 years over the course of my life. So, and that'll come into play a little bit later. So I spent about 4 years working in restaurants and paying off my student loans, thinking about what I wanted to do, and then I ended up taking about 4 semesters at KU, and I entered in the geophysics department because I had to declare something. So I was technically a graduate student in geophysics, taking all the math and physics and some of the meteorology that I would need to get a graduate degree. And then I ended up applying to graduate schools and got into University of Wisconsin and got my master's, and ended up going into the Weather Service. So that path took me 29 years. I did not start in the Weather Service until I was 29 years old. So when I look back on it all, it's really a method of connecting the dots. One thing sort of played into it, and I'm just going to sort of talk through how all that played out for me. When in Madison, like I said, I came up there to go to grad school. I came up there, I got a teaching assistant. I taught all 4 semesters that I was at UW, and I taught intro. I taught labs for intro. So that involved a lot of creating work for the labs, and then learning all about the kinds of stuff you have to use to run classes, whether that's just Microsoft Excel to keep grades, or it's learning the web-based software that you use, or designing web pages for your staff or for your students. So I learned a lot about those things as a teaching assistant, plus the whole just managing people, students having issues, students struggling with work, students who are doing well, and how to keep them moving in the right direction. So you learn a lot about working with large groups of people with a large different set of skills when you do something like that. And then over the summers, I did a little bit of work with Michael Morgan as a research assistant. He was trying to do hurricane modeling and put me in charge of trying to parameterize convection in numerical models, which was something I really didn't know much about, but doing that taught me a tremendous amount about how models handle instability and itself. And so that was a huge learning experience for me, and so that was very useful. Also in the summers when I was up there, I still continued to wait tables to make extra money. I actually worked up in the Wisconsin Dells both summers I was up there. And like I said before, those teaches you people skills. It teaches you a lot about time management, troubleshooting things, customer service. There's a lot of skills in that kind of work that come into play and are useful in just about everything that you will do in your life. So. And then also while I was up there, I think it might have been my last semester, I was finally able to get in and do a job shadow at the National Weather Service there in Solomon. And basically, I did most of my hours in just a couple of weeks. I did it that way on purpose because it was winter and we had some fast-moving clipper systems that were dropping snow, and I wanted to see the forecast process for that. So I spent a bunch of time out there over a short course of time and saw several systems move through and drop a couple inches of snow, and got to sit with some pretty great forecasters and watch them do that process. And I met a lot of people, including Margaret Mooney and Rusty and several of the staff that were there at the time. So it kind of got me some connections in terms of the Weather Service. And so I got my 1 credit or whatever it was and counted towards my degree. I graduated, and then I applied, and I came out of the hiring freeze. So I literally had to wait. I wasn't sure, but I think it lifted the same month that I graduated. So I was able to apply on a mass bid, and I applied for like 10 different offices, and the office that ended up picking me was Key West, which is a long way from Wisconsin and a long way from Kansas. But I always had an interest in tropical meteorology, and so this would be my big chance to go and get some experience doing that. And it turns out that when I talked to the MIC down there, what he saw from my previous slide was he saw that I had shadowed at Milwaukee. So he knew I had some experience in the Weather Service Office, and I knew how Weather Service Office worked. And he had actually hired, I think, 2 or 3 new people with that bid. So we all spun up at the same time. And there's a photo of there, me launching a balloon. It must be morning because I have coffee sitting on the hood of that car. But so I learned how to launch balloons, and I also took over their upper air program. So it seems like a simple thing: ordering supplies, balloons, parachutes, keeping track of things, radio songs, filling out government forms, doing inventory, that sort of thing. And then, in the slow times, because there's a lot of calm weather in the Keys for several months out of the year, I was interested in web design from doing my work as a TA. I had learned a little bit about HTML, but I took that and I learned how to make clickable maps. And I took our co-op data, which wasn't very large, but I made it so that you could click points on a map and find data about our co-op observers. So I learned a lot about coding in my downtime down there in the Keys. And then in that same vein, they were changing the way they did NOAA weather radio. So what I ended up doing was learning the coding behind that software. So that was kind of my side gigs when I was down there in the Keys, in addition to all the training that you do just to become a better forecaster.
Hey, Chris, I don't know if you get the notifications from the chat, but Dan wanted to know how hurricane season was down there.
Oh, so I'm not. Why am I not getting them on this screen? I wonder. Hang on.
It might be because you're sharing the PowerPoint screen. I'll keep an eye on it and break in if I need to.
Yeah, just throw something in if you see it's not popping up on my screen. I moved down there, as Pete might remember, pregnant with my first child, and Floyd was bearing down on the Keys the first month I was there. So that was kind of terrifying, but it curved, as you recall, and missed us and hit the Carolinas, where my sister-in-law was at the time. And then I was also there for Irene, the smaller one, not the bigger one. And because I think because I was pregnant, I think my boss was concerned about me being in the office, so he actually sent me home, which actually turned out to be really interesting because then I could sit on my porch and watch the rain bands come in. It ended up being a high tropical storm or a low end hurricane as it came into the Keys. So it was really interesting. I was not at a loss for interesting weather when I was down there in the Keys. But we didn't have any big ones when I was there because I was only there for 18 months. So I was really only there for a full season. Was that the only question you saw so far there, Pete?
Yeah, Josh just mentioned that weather radio coding sounded pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And so they were transitioning to, I think it was called Snuffle, or it was a different kind of formatter. So I was getting in there and trying to figure out how to code the products. And so because it has to be that's what the weather radio software reads over the radio. So yeah, so I kind of got my nose in that. So, and that was a great segue. When I was hired by Pueblo, I was bidding out, trying to get back to the plains. I wanted to get back into severe weather, convective weather, out of hurricane weather. And Colorado was a good mix of, had a good chunk of plains, but it also had mountains. And in working with Greg Tripoli and all those cross sections that you do with Martin and Tripoli on downslope windstorms or mid-latitude cyclones, obviously that bred an interest in me in working both those kinds of weather. So if I could get a job in Colorado, I could work mountain weather, right? Well, I bid on Colorado, I bid on Pueblo, and ended up getting a position in Pueblo, which is in the southern part of the state, southeast part of the state. So literally, I think it's 1 out of every 3 days in Colorado in the summer you have severe weather because the storms fire along the mountains, and there's no cap at the top of the mountain usually. So the general rule is be off the mountain by noon because you're going to have storms by then. So you get a lot of convection, you get a lot of hail, you get a lot of wind, so you get a lot of experience issuing warnings working in a place like Colorado. So I kind of hit the ground running with that. But what I ended up parlaying for them was that they wanted somebody who knew something about weather radio. And I remember my first week at Pueblo, something went wrong, and I was able to get in there, look at the code, and fix it, and I was brand new. So being a webmaster and having my nose in the code for weather radio is one of the reasons they hired me at Pueblo. So, and it was where I wanted to go because I wanted to do mountains and I wanted to do plains, and so that was a good fit. Turns out also that my boss, Bill Fortune at the time, was a big fan of beta testing stuff. So we were beta testing this thing called GFE, which is their graphical forecast editor, which we all use now. But at that time, it was just a piece of a larger piece of software that was really difficult and really cumbersome. And our guy at Pueblo said, you know what, we're just going to take this GFE part and make this work and let the rest go. So we were one of the first offices to do that. And I helped set up formatters and helped set up the software that pulls the text out of the graphics, out of that software. So I got involved with that. And then I also got, like I said, I got to do plains, which I always wanted to do. I finally got to forecast in the mountains, which I always thought was interesting. And then they had this strange thing out there called fire weather. So I learned a lot about fire weather in the 4 years that I was there. In fact, the Hayman fire blew up when I was in Colorado. So we had some big events, and I learned a lot about it. And so I was there for 4 years, and finally decided to try to make my way back towards where I grew up. So I bid on Topeka, and lo and behold, they actually hired me. So I got my job as a senior meteorologist at the Weather Service in Topeka. And one of the things that I did when I got here was they decided they wanted to spin up a fire weather program, and so that's what they used me for. So I helped get the Topeka Weather Office on board doing fire weather text at the time. Now we do grids also, and supporting local partners from the Forest Service to the Wildlife Service, all these groups that need to burn on purpose. It turns out that, I don't know if you know much about, if you've ever seen some of the images from Kansas, and about this time of year, March or April, you'll see giant plumes of smoke coming out of the state of Kansas. They burn, there's 3 million acres of prairie here in Kansas that they will burn on purpose for various reasons. Mostly it's to get nice green grass for cows by June, but they also want to get it burned off because they want the dead stuff gone, because they need brood cover spring for pheasant and quail. So the hunters are really interested in that. We have a huge invasive red cedar problem here, and fire is one of the few things that will get rid of it. And then a lot of the farmers here enrolled in the CRP program back in the 80s, and so they are required, once in the terms of their contract, to burn their land or disc it or till it. Turns out burning it is the cheapest thing to do, so a lot of farmers want to burn their land. So all kinds of different entities that are interested in burning in the state of Kansas. So I ended up getting super involved with that and being a program leader for that. When I initially came here, I was also the webmaster because they didn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to break in just real quick. Getting back to Pueblo, Andrew had a question. Did storms typically go upscale without the cap in Pueblo, or were supercells ever part of the observed convection?
They're often supercells because you get automatic shear. So you have the winds coming out of the southwest off the top of the mountains, but you've got upslope flow developing off the plains that are coming from the southeast off the plains and up the side of the mountain. So it's automatic shear. So they turn to hail pretty quick. So, and then depending on whether or not they could grow upscale or not, would just depend on the environment that they came out onto the plains. So that's a lot of what you would look at is what your environment was like. You knew they were going to start. Whether or not they would sustain or not would depend on the environment that was in place once they got off the mountains.
He says, thanks.
You betcha. All right, so yeah, like I said, they pulled me in to be the webmaster there. It turns out that they needed somebody to help them with their graphical forecast editor. So I had a lot of experience with that, so I ended up doing that here at this office also. And then Jennifer Stark started a big program out in South Dakota called Women in Science Day, and she brought that I'm here, and I helped her get that spun up at Topeka. We've been doing that for, I'm going to say, 12 or 13 years. We bring 250 7th grade girls. We try to focus on more at-risk students that may not get a chance to come to a college campus, but we bring them to the Washburn University campus for a day every fall, and do a day full of labs and speakers. We feed them lunch, and we have some fun stuff that we do, and we try to get them excited about science. We have usually have about 20 labs morning and 20 labs in the afternoon that we send them all to. And they can do everything from biology to physiology to meteorology. We just expose them to as much science as we can to try to get them interested in staying in sciences. So we've been doing that for a long time. So all of those things. So I've gone from doing some coding and doing some web stuff, and now I'm actually becoming a program leader. So 12 years into my career, my boss retired. My boss goes back to Des Moines. He came from Des Moines as a WCM, came here to be the boss, and he goes back to Des Moines to be the MIC. When that job opened up, I felt like I was at a point in my life where I was ready to do something like that. I don't mind administration minutia. I don't mind budgets. I don't mind dealing with property and keeping track of things and dealing with money. I don't mind managing people because I've done that. And I've been a program leader. So my name in the hat, and they hired me. So I took that promotion 2 years ago in May. I took it in March. I think I got it in May. So an interesting thing to note is I was not a manager in the Weather Service. I was not a SU. I was not a WCM. I was a lead forecaster. I'd been a lead forecaster for 12 years. I have 2 kids. I've been a restaurant supervisor. I have a lot of experience in my life that makes me suitable to be a manager that does not come from being a manager in the agency itself. So all that experience sort of added up along the way, and I was able to leverage that and then get the job as the MIC. So. I think that's kind of just the big overall track of how I got where I am. And back to Dana Burn, where does the highway go to? The big takeaways I would say is that your whole life shapes where you go. And I didn't know I was going to really I had no idea I liked fire weather. I was actually really interested in fire weather once I knew what it was. So don't be afraid to try new things and kind of jump on new opportunities and see if you like where that takes you. I also like to tell people it's okay if your dreams change. I always wanted to be a storm chaser. Well, it turns out if you decide that you go out and hate lightning and hail and you don't want to be a storm chaser, that's okay. I think people get stuck on what they say they always wanted to do. Well, it's okay if it's different. I think things that you want to do change as you get older, and you find new things that you're wildly interested in that you know anything about. So don't be afraid to change your path. And then wherever you go, whatever you do, find things that you're interested in and then chase them and become good at something. Become a subject matter expert, and that's what makes you desirable to other people for the things that you're good at and that you can do for them in the agency. And most importantly, enjoy the ride that you're doing. So that was just kind of that's just the overview of who I am and how I got here. I gotta figure out how to stop sharing that screen and go back to you guys. Wait a minute, I can find it. Hang on. So
should be a little circle with a square next to it that we were sharing it.
I just hit stop sharing, right?
Yep.
Now it's back to me.
Good to go.
That's just a quick shot overview of who I am, and I'm not at all bragging about who I am. That's just how I got here, and it's not where I thought I would be. And I've been very lucky. I've always enjoyed my job and what I do. And I've tried to stick with that. I try to do things that make me happy and make me feel fulfilled and that I like doing and I feel like I'm contributing to. But it's certainly not, it's not the track. If you would have told me 20 years ago I would have been the MIC at the Topeka office, I probably would have laughed in your face. So it's just where the track took me. And I'm very happy that it got me here. So anyway.
Great, thank you.
That's the big picture.
Yeah. Let's open up. We can open up the chat for questions if anyone has them, and go ahead and fire away, and we can go there. And I guess while we're, I had someone was going to ask. Hold on a second. Yeah, I was going to. Well, let's go. Ketzel, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, I think there was an advantage to coming into the Weather Service at 29. And I came in at 29 and I came in 6 months pregnant. And I came into an office, bless his heart, I was the first woman to come to this office. They initially didn't even want to give me a separate women's bathroom. So they had 2 bathrooms, they were gender neutral. Now it's funny because we're back to gender neutral, right? But it was, to me, I think I was old enough to realize it was, ignorance is the wrong word, but it's the closest word I can come to. It was just something they didn't understand. They hadn't worked with somebody who was female before. So I don't know that I would consider it discrimination as much as I would consider it ignorance. I think they were on board with me being there. They just didn't quite know what to do with me. And so I just made my expectations really clear. I have been harassed, but not in this agency. I was in food service for a long time, and I had a big we had a big investigation go down for one of the hotels I worked for some folks that were doing some things they shouldn't have been doing, and so that has happened to me, but not in the government, not in the other service. I think just knowing if you have issues, who to report to, making yourself very clear that if somebody's doing something that you don't want them to do, that you need to say that and say that it is not okay, because I think sometimes people don't realize that it's not okay. Oh, that's just funny. That was just a joke. Yeah, no, it's not, and you really can't talk to me like that. And if you start having any trouble, know the steps in the process to go up if you're having issues with that, for sure. When I say any part of my path to my current job is not viable for a student today, I think the biggest thing that has changed since I came in is the way that they're bringing people onboarding into the Weather Service. Whereas when I came in, it was just get in, go anywhere. There were some places I wouldn't go, but okay, I'll go to the Keys, no problem, because I knew I would only be there a couple of years. I would say now that if you decide to go into the Weather Service, you might be in an office for 4 to 6 years. So be sure that it's someplace you don't mind being for 4 to 6 years. And many places are. I mean, there's a lot of great places to live. And I wanted, when I came to Madison, I thought it was so cool. I got to see lake effect weather. And I went to the Keys and I got to see hurricanes. And I went to Colorado and I got to do mountain weather. So I like the variety of weather that provided for me. But I think now you're going to be a little bit more, it's more stable. But then again, you don't get to move around as much. So it just depends on what you want to do. I would say within the agency, there are opportunities to do temporary assignments elsewhere. They're difficult to get. But I've got one right now who's going out to D.C. to work on some projects out there. So there are opportunities for that if you chase them and you really work hard for them. There's not very many, but they're out there. Hands-on research opportunities. We've got some folks that have done some research on their own. A lot of the guys that did Hailstone, if you guys have heard about Hailstone, would spend their own time in the summers gathering data for that research. I give my folks as much time as I can to do research in the office. Field research, we don't specifically fund field research. Most of what our guys are doing are working with data sets that are collected elsewhere. So I would say that they're available. I'm not sure that would be at a field office level. That might be more something that's Storm Prediction Center, Water Prediction Center, or even back in the DC area where they're putting those kinds of projects together. A lot of that data comes out of universities that are out there doing research that we get our hands on that data and then work with those data sets. And plus, I'm sure there's lots of opportunities up in NOAA for doing. You see a lot of things coming down on we get these newsletters and there's people, standing out on icebergs, doing that sort of thing. So, the bigger agency of NOAA itself has a lot more research in it than just the Weather Service itself. The Hayman was pretty scary. I mean, of course, we just had the May 28th tornado, which just almost hit the town that I live in, so that was kind of scary. But that actually went really well, and I'm really proud of our staff for the way they handled that. The Hayman fire was pretty crazy because you would step out the office and you could see, the whole backside of the mountain was on fire, and it just looked like a giant thunderstorm. I think I have to say that, not crazy, but the water spouts in Florida are actually really cool, and if you live down there for a while, you get to a point where you can watch the Q field building along the island chain, and you can see where the towers are growing the fastest, and you can go watch them develop because there's certain days, certain weather setups that make those things go, and you can actually go out and sort of chase water spouts, if that makes any sense. I'm not a tornado chaser, mainly because I came into weather because I was terrified of thunderstorms, and when I say that, I was terrified of thunder and lightning. I still don't like lightning, and neither should you. So. I don't chase because I don't want to be the tallest thing in a field in a thunderstorm. So maybe that's why I like water spouts, because you didn't have to have thunder, but you could still see something that was a lot like a tornado and be safe observing it. Oh, someone's got, what are
So there was another question. Douglas Schumacher was asking, what are your day-to-day duties as a meteorologist in charge?
Yes, it's a lot more administration and personnel than it is forecasting, but I'm still required to be all trained up for everything in the field also. So if I have to go out in ops and do the forecast or issue a warning, I still am fully trained to do that. And I did it for long enough that a lot of it is ingrained, the buttonology and such. And that's honestly, when I need a break, I go out in ops and look at the weather. That's where when I'm not dealing with personnel, or I deal with. I come in the morning, I put out all the fires in my email. I deal a lot with personnel actions, budget, property, administration, getting things mailed out of the office. Plus, I'm also focusing on promotions and awards and making sure that our staff is appreciated for what they do. Personnel management, making sure people are doing their job, making sure people that are doing their job well are getting extra recognition for that. So it's a lot more administration than it is being a day-to-day meteorologist, but I was ready for a change, and I like that. I like that I get to still do both. But to be fair, I've always liked numbers and budgeting and lists and organizing, so that probably plays well into being an MIC because I have to keep track of a lot of stuff. I was not. That's what I was saying. I was not a WCM or a SU. I was the fire weather program leader, and I do a lot with women in science. I've got 2 teenagers. I was a restaurant manager, and so I've done hiring and firing and payroll and all that outside of the weather service. When I was back in restaurants, I used to do that. So all my management experience, outside of the fact that when you are a lead forecaster, when the MIC is gone, you are the MIC. So you get it actively in your shift work, but you're not officially an MIC on paper. So no, I'm not a WCM or a SU. WCM is a warning coordination meteorologist, and they are kind of the big outreach people in your office. And then the SU is the science operations officer. They are in charge of training the staff, keeping on top of all the new science that's coming down, and showing us what we can use in operations to improve our warning and forecast process. So I did neither of those. I used to think I wanted to be a WCM until I saw what our WCMs do, and they spend a lot of time away from home and a lot of time doing spotter talks, and they don't do that so much anymore, but back at the time. So I thought about being a WCM at one time, but I liked being a lead forecaster, and so I wasn't ready to leave that position. So I saw a different one. What's crazy? What advice would you give to students nervous entering an uncertain time of employment? I think the one thing I like about the government is that there is a little more job security with it. We've got really good health insurance. We have good retirement if you can get in. So in a way, it's sort of old school. I think I didn't enter it for the job security initially. I did look at media, and I did look at TV, and it wasn't a path I wanted to choose. But I think if you can get in with the government, it's a good gig. So. Did you go into your waitressing years with the intent to eventually go into forecasting? It sort of all came together. So when I was in high school, I actually worked at Taco Bell, and I worked at Perkins, and then I worked for Holiday Inn for 8 years. So I worked at Holiday Inn for a couple years in high school and then 4 years of college. And then when I came out when I came out of college and decided I wasn't going to go straight back to school, I waitressed for like 2 or 3 years straight. And then, so I was able to use that as supplemental income when I was in grad school. So, when I graduated from KU, I realized I wasn't going to use my degree, and so I was going to spend some time, make some money, pay off my loans, and then go to grad school. So I did know at that time when I was paying tables that I was going to go back to school. I just needed some time there. So, did that answer your question? I think it did. Kind of gave me some time to think about a lot of stuff, though. So.
Yeah, I like the kind of message there that you're kind of constantly learning and constantly kind of evolving as who you are, and it's a real positive message. It's something that all of us can kind of take.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome because I sort of still can't believe that I'm here, but I'm coming around to it. I really like what I do. I'm told that I'm good at what I do. I am not super involved in the research side of things. I like reading other people's research. Please send me your research. I will read it. I don't know about you guys, but all this coronavirus stuff, I'm digging for the scientific papers. That's what I'm reading. I'm reading for data. I like information. I like problem solving. I like knowing why things happen. I'm not particularly good at doing it myself. So to be fair, I'm probably in the place I need to be because I like research, but I'm not terribly great at doing it. I've done some of it, but I'm not good at not knowing the answer. I like to know the answer. So I will read what you have found with enthusiasm, but I'm not that great at doing it myself.
All right. Do we have any other questions from students?
They probably want to know about their graduation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's we'll have that discussion here in a second. But, all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Kris. And if anybody wants to unmute and fire thanks out, yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we all appreciate it.
Anytime. It's always nice to get to see real people these days. Yes.
Yeah.
All
there
right.
you go. Holy moly.
They're all there.
Sounds like fireworks going off over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. I will back out and let you guys talk shop. Oh yeah, I can stay on the line. I can hang out. It's up to you guys.
Okay. Whatever you'd like to do. We're gonna do Kris, if you could stay on the line for a minute, I do have a quick question from Paige.
Okay.
If you want to, or if Paige, the other thing I would say is if it's a question you want to do as for the whole group, we can do that. If you want to contact Kris individually, is that something where you'd be willing to have us share your email address?
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, it's just my name.
Okay. Paige, you want us to share that with you? Great.
There it is.
Oh, there you go.
So,
That was quick. Man, it's amazing how I haven't even hit return and you're answering the question already. It's amazing.
and we were talking about before you guys all logged on that I think I'm busier at my kitchen table than I am in my office. I'm doing way more here than I was doing there. I don't know if that's good or not. So, all right. I got to get off here and if you have any questions, just send me an email.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks again,
Great, guys. Yep, you bet.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
I'm going to stop
You bet.
the recording then now too, because I don't think we need to record the rest of this.
That sounds fine, Pete. Thanks.